and welcome to the channel. My name is Max and this is the first video on the channel and hopefully the first video in a series I'm going to do on my drive from Canada down south. So I'm going to talk about kind of the idea behind the trip, what my plans are, and then we'll go through the truck, talk about how it's been sort of camperized or kitted out for livability, and then I'll cover the mechanics as well a little bit. So as far as planning the trip goes, there is really no plan. The idea is kind of just go where I want and stay where I want as long as I feel like it. Ideally, I'd like to make this trip last at least a year, maybe 2. I've budgeted out for that, but everything is going to be based off savings. So depending on how far my money goes and depending on whether the truck and myself make it, that's going to be kind of what determines how long this trip is. So I spent the last little while staying in the truck part-time and doing longer and longer trips. This was to get an idea for how the setup works and what the truck needed. Found out I needed a few extra things and the truck needed a bit more work than I thought. The only real plan with the trip is to start going south pretty much immediately. So I'm not going up to Alaska or to Tuktoyaktuk. It's mainly because I'm leaving a bit later than I initially planned, and with it being late October, it's getting a lot colder and a lot darker sooner. I honestly don't really want to be in the tent when it's freezing out. I kind of just want to stick to the back roads and do as much wild camping as possible. I think one of the biggest challenges is just going to be getting used to living out of a vehicle full time. I've also never made videos before, so consistently getting the camera out or the drone has been a bit of a challenge. I'm also learning how to talk to the camera or to a mic and how to fly the drone. The truck is a 1994 Toyota Land Cruiser Prado with a whopping 321,000 kilometers on it. It's got a full-size spare on the back. My axe and shovel are mounted on the rear ladder. On spare I've got a backpack where I keep my garbage, a few rags and funnels. The backpack is made by Alltop and I got it on Amazon. On the other side I've got a 5-pound propane tank and a nice little waterproof holder that was a birthday present from my girlfriend. Propane tank sits in there nicely and all I have to do is hook up a hose and that runs to the stove that I use. There's also 2 lights in the back that are mounted to the roof. And there's also lighting above both the A-pillars. One is on the driver's side and the other is on the passenger side. There's also a 20-inch light bar on the front bumper, and all the lighting is wired down the A-pillar to a 6-button switch panel in the center console, so I can control the back, side, and front lighting individually. And it's all wired into a secondary fuse box that came with the switch panel. Roof tent is going to be my home for the trip. It's just a generic no-name roof tent, but so far it's been awesome. I've spent a lot of nights in the rain and fairly high wind, and no problem so far, so fingers crossed. Same thing with the awning. It's a Dan Shell outdoors awning, just off Amazon, but it's held up to some surprisingly strong winds as long as it's tied down. On the roof tent, I've got a 100-watt Renogy Flex solar panel. I also have a second 100-watt fold-out panel in case I'm parked in the shade or just act as a booster panel. There are 2 roof bars with traction boards on the top. These are just some generic Amazon traction boards, but they have saved me a few times in the snow and the sand, so definitely recommend them. The solar gets wired down the driver's side A-pillar through the firewall, same way that the other lighting harness does, and it just runs straight to my Jackery 1500. So far the system's been great. I don't think I'm going to need a bigger battery bank, although for editing I might get a generator. Jackery is also wired into the 12 volt of the truck, so whenever it's running, it's getting charged. So going on storage for clothes, I've got a 4-bin locking drawer system from Canadian Tire. It works great, and I'm able to store everything I need. Sitting on a wooden platform with D-rings on both sides, and there's a ratchet strap holding it down. For small stuff, there's a backseat organizer, and there's also wires running from front to back, both sides, with a few extra hang organizers, and I'll be putting some curtains up along the windows. There's also a wire running behind the driver's seat and passenger seat with a black curtain to keep the sun out, and just for a bit of security to keep eyes out. Main storage is in the back. I built a 2-drawer system. The left drawer has all my tools, has pretty much anything I need for any job, and the right drawer has my dry goods and pots and pans in the back, coffee grinders, etc. There's water storage on the left side, and underneath the red jack there is a bin full of parts that has bearings, belts, filters, pretty much anything I'd need on the road. Fridge is on a 2-foot slide, and it has my cutlery drawer under it. The fridge is an Iceco VL45 Pro. I've had it for a few months, and so far it's been great. There's a fold-down table bolted into the right door, and that's where I do most of my cooking and everything else. I also have a fold-out table as well if I need more room. As far as the truck maintenance goes, it's mostly just been the basics, changing the fluids, so full coolant flush, all the oils. Front bearings have been done recently, as well as all the U-joints. This is a 3-liter 1KZ TE turbo diesel, and it being a diesel, I did decide to delete the EGR to keep it cooler. And I also replaced the intake manifold gaskets because they were seeping a bit. I wired an EGT probe into the exhaust manifold and a temperature probe for the transmission. Both of those gauges are mounted to the dash. I did get a bit lazy and just used double-sided sticky tape because I was in a rush, and this was all kind of last minute for the trip. The only real modification I did specifically for the trip was putting together and adding a water separator or pre-filter for the diesel. So I'm using a Raycor R30 series, and honestly the hardest part about this was just figuring out where to mount it. Someone walked by in the shop and came up with the idea of using the battery tie down, so I just put a piece of angle iron. The only other thing is the tires have about 70,000 kilometers on them, so they were new when I got the truck, but they are getting towards the end of their life. So that's a bit of a look into how the last few months of the trip have gone. Obviously there's room for improvement with taking the videos, talking to the camera, and kind of getting better shots, but that's as expected with it being the first video. So I'm not sure which direction I'm going to go with these. I don't know if it's going to be more vlog style or if it's going to be kind of more cinematic, but either way, I'll figure it out along the way. I made a promise that I'd release the first video of this trip on the day I was leaving, so tomorrow morning I am heading out, and if you're watching this, then I am driving south, and I'll see you next time.